let's say you're in finance and you're a VP of finance, just hypothetically, of course. If you just have VP of finance in 2 or 3 places on your LinkedIn profile, odds are you're not going to be found very well. You need to take everything you do in finance, financial planning and analysis, forecasting, month-end close, and everything that's associated with anything you've ever done in finance, and get those keywords into your LinkedIn profile. Very, very important.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Mike Sudermann, who is my friend and part of my mastermind group. We're going to chat about the power of LinkedIn and relationships to boost your career. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote is from Henry Miller. We create our fate every day. Most of the ills we suffer are directly traceable to our own behaviors. It begs the question, what fate are you creating for yourself? As for me, the year is mapped out, and the first 12 weeks have a focus and a game plan is in place. That was part of our action step from the last episode, which was to work on a plan for 2020 with a goal of getting clarity of vision. We're 1 week in. How are you on the clarity? Is it 2020 vision for you this year? If not, figure out how to make those shifts in the lens you look at the world through to achieve the change that you want. Mike helped me update my LinkedIn profile and dramatically improve it. LinkedIn is where you go to search for employees and also to build business connections. It's not supposed to be a resume. It should be a story that makes people want to reach out and connect with you. Mike will dig deeper into that today. Mike Sudermann is part of my mastermind, and he's a highly accomplished executive recruiter and career transition specialist who places top-tier talent with companies around the world. He is the founder and CEO of the award-winning executive search firm, Select Executive Search and Outplacement. He has personally reviewed over 80,000 resumes, worked with thousands of executives, and made more than 300 placements. Mike founded and created Advantage Outplacement Academy, a market-leading career transition program for professionals at all levels. Mike is a best-selling author of the book called The Executive Leap. He's an industry speaker and has a daily podcast called The Executive Leap, where he discusses executive recruiter insider secrets to leaping into your next job. Let's meet my friend. Welcome to Richer Soul, Mike Sudermann. It's great to have you join us today.
Good to be here, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
And I'm excited for the conversation. Lots of exciting topics that we've been chatting about in the past, and I want to dig in a little bit more. But before we do, we always start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, my gosh. So that's a great question. I'm old school. I was mowing yards when I was 7, selling everything. I had a newspaper route when I wasn't throwing papers in the morning. I was mowing yards on the weekends. I had a second paper route, which was kind of like a weekly news rag that, 20 or 30 pages, small thing that I would deliver. Back in the old days, of course, we kept all our customer information on a handwritten piece of paper or a little flip notepad that I'd carry with me with the addresses, and we'd wake up in the morning at 5:30, fold all our paper. We learned to, you could rubber band them, and we learned how to fold newspapers into like a square, but you can't throw those very far. So when you're walking down the middle of the street at 5:30 in the morning, carrying about 50 pounds of, maybe more, 60, 70 pounds worth of papers on the front and the back, if you got them rolled up in a real tight band, you can get 60, 70 feet out of them. You can get pretty good at hitting front porches. You hit a few light posts on the way, and you miss a few here or there, but you want to get them as close to the front porch or on the porch as possible. Now that's no one gets that anymore. Right? You don't get your paper on your front porch anymore typically, but that's what I did. I mean, I was always working. I was raised by a father, and my mom was not around past about 11 or 12 years old, but my father raised us to, if we wanted it, we bought it. It was just the way it was. So I learned an extremely strong work ethic at a very early age, and it's carried me all the way through life and college and business ownership and so forth. And to my kids' chagrin, they are getting a fair amount of that themselves in today's world. So I think it's important.
I think it's very important too. And some of those things have changed. And I know I struggled for a while there because I also had a paper route. And I think that was the classic way for kids to learn. But nowadays, kids have other opportunities. Now it's more online type of things, and other opportunities are out there, but they've got to kind of get out and do it. And that's the struggle I see. So it's great that you are doing that with your kids. Are you doing anything to teach them about money more than just having them work?
Yeah, I just had a conversation not a week ago with my daughter, who is earning money to pay off a debt. And without getting into specifics, let's just say that she lost her retainer. These darn retainers are a couple $100 a piece. And, we're just not going to go buy her another retainer. She has to learn the consequences of losing a retainer, or consequences of making sure she learns how to keep track of these things. And we're just not going to go replace them at a whim. So she has to help pay for this retainer, and in doing so, she's going to earn money around the house. So my wife gave her an opportunity to earn some money on a project, and my wife agreed to pay her $5. It took her about an hour and a half. It took my daughter about an hour and a half to do this, and she was just kind of complaining to me recently that it was only $5. So I proceeded to turn that into an economics lesson for my 12-year-old. And I think most of it probably flew over her head. But I was just trying to get her to understand that, if she went to work for McDonald's, she's not old enough though, but if she went to work for a fast food company, she'd make minimum wage, it's like $7.50 an hour. They're going to take out taxes. And I said, they're going to take out federal unemployment, state taxes, and maybe one other tax in there. And she didn't really understand all that. So I had to explain a little bit about the taxes. Then she asked really good questions. Well, I don't want to pay taxes. What happens if I don't pay tax? So this turned into a 20-minute economic lesson on the importance of first appreciating what your mother is giving you, because you're making $5 cash and you're not having to pay taxes on it technically. And B, why it's important to instill that work ethic to do that sort of thing. So we try to provide lessons to our kids as much as possible. They're not getting a free ride. We want them to appreciate hard work and the cost of what it takes to generate revenue for yourself. And I know people might think this is crazy, but we tax they get allowance. My daughter gets $4 a week, and she gives me about $1.50 of that a week. It goes to taxes. Now I call it tax, but what I'm really doing is I'm taking the $1.50 and I'm squirreling it away for her. So when she's old enough to have a bank account, when she's 16 or 17, they'll probably, she makes babysitting money or pet sitting or, whatever she does, she gives me a percentage of it. Every week I ask her for it. And I mean, she's 12. I think she's got about $1,000 saved up, so when she starts making real money, whatever that is, or larger chunks with babysitting or whatever, when she's 16 or 17, starts working in a more traditional type of role that a teenager would have, she's still going to contribute a percentage of that into a savings account of some kind. So we really firmly in our Sudermann family believe in, paying yourself, covering your taxes, but learning to pay yourself first and then living off the rest of that money. And I think it's a good way to go. My grandfather taught me to do that when I was mowing yards when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. And my grandfather retired when he was 45 years old, a multimillionaire, and he was in the carpet business in the 20s and 30s and 50s and 60s. The carpet, selling carpet, so it's just important to have a good, strong work ethic and understand that we always, every parent on the planet tells their kids money doesn't grow on trees. But we need to make sure that they have a good understanding of everything that's involved with what you earn and instill some sort of work ethic along the way.
And that's very true. We did much the same with my kids as well, to make sure that you instill that type of savings rate. I don't think we did as much on the work side. We probably should have done more.
It's a tough balance, Rocky. It's tough. So here's the challenge. When you and I were in college, or in high school trying to get to college, if we had good grades, it was great. And with the better grades we had, the better schools we typically got into. Nowadays, if you don't have a 4.0 or a 4.2 or a 4.5, and multiple kids have those higher level GPAs, it's not, there's so much pressure on these kids, these teenagers, to have these extremely high grade point averages to get into even some of the local universities that, now I live in North Carolina. So, you got UNC Chapel Hill, you have Duke, you have NC State, East Carolina, Appalachia, you have all these great universities. But even to get into some of the better state universities, you got to be the cream of the cream of the cream of the crop, which is a challenge. And so there's a lot of pressure on kids nowadays to really have these super high grade point averages. And as a result, there's only so much they can do in a day, go to school all day and study all night. And it's a fine line, a balance of how much you can expect your kids, especially when they're juniors or seniors going in, preparing for college, to work during the school year, if at all. So we have to try to maximize as much of that educational learning and revenue generation over the summer as we can. But it's a tricky balance, especially nowadays, I think.
It is. And I guess because of where my kids went to school and how things were done, I didn't realize as much about the GPAs. And I've heard a lot about grade inflation. We did a whole episode on kind of the whole college thing and what's going on and all the games that are being played. And it's just been kind of eye-opening to me.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and it is eye opening, and we could spend the whole hour talking about that. You've already had one episode, so.
And that we did with somebody who's in the middle of the game itself, with the testing services and all of that type of stuff, and just spending all that time. So you had this great upbringing. They taught you all about money and hard work. And so you got out of college and life was perfect, right?
Yeah, sure. Exactly. Like it is for everybody. So it's interesting you asked that question. I just spent the weekend in Kansas City, where I'm from, Kansas originally, and my brother's business owner there. And we were having this very chat. We grew up with a father who did not believe in taking risks. He grew up with a father who took tons and tons of risk. And our understanding is our grandfather had, now my grandfather, retired a millionaire, was on my mom's side. The grandfather that barely retired with any money in his pocket was on my dad's side, and he had multiple jobs. My grandfather had multiple positions. He was an entrepreneur. Then he went to work for another company, and he went in the military, and he's back doing his own thing. And he had 10 kids through the Depression of the 30s. And so I think my father saw that as a challenge and decided that he was just going to work for the state, and did that for 45 years and didn't take a single risk in his career at all. And as a result, my brother and I saw that as not enough risk, because he lost out on some opportunities that could have been very fortuitous, or not fortuitous, but very lucrative for him, and didn't take any risk at all. So ironically, my brother and I are now both completely self-employed, and we've been that way since we pretty much graduated from college. And we've both owned multiple businesses, and some have sold and done well, and some have just been learning experiences. So, yeah, I mean, it's a constant challenge. But here's what I'll tell you. My father was a phenomenal relationship builder. That's what he did. He was an educator and a relationship builder. And although he never really took a lot of risks, he taught us from a very, very early age and he used to say this and all the time, he'd say, treat janitors and senators alike. And I'll never forget it. My father he knew everybody. I mean, he was in a senior level administrative capacity for a university. And even though he worked in the office of the president, and he was the president of the university's right-hand man, if you will, right-hand person, he would walk in. I witnessed this many times. He'd walk in. He'd walk from the ground floor up to he'd take the stairs. He'd walk to the third or fourth level of the building or floor of the building, and he would bypass the mailroom, and he would say hello to everyone in the mailroom. And if some guy was sweeping the floor, he knew the guy's name. The guy would say, "Hey, Fred, how you doing? Nice to see you. Have a good day." And it was like that all the way up. He knew everybody, and everybody knew him, and that's how he rolled. He was just a great relationship builder. And that lesson by itself has, it's just how I'm built. I just try to build connectivity with people because I'm sincerely interested in talking to folks. I mean, I think it's very difficult to fake connectivity. You can't really fake it. People see through it. You and I reached out, right? I reached out. You said, "Hey, let's connect." We connected. We had a nice conversation. There's sincerity in there, and you have it with me, and I have it with you. I just don't think you can fake it. But if you have a genuine interest in connecting and building relationships with people, and I'm not talking just purely on LinkedIn or some other electronic format. I'm talking real life connectivity, and shaking hands with people was really important. And my father taught both my brother and I that. And as a result, we've been able to just take that one life lesson and, carry it pretty far in our careers. So,
and I think building relationships is a very big key to success, and it does open doors, and it allows you to be able to have an easier lifestyle. And I think it varies depending on the industries as to how things go, but definitely helps to open doors. And I think today in the job marketplace, and I know when I was working, it was the same thing. A lot of jobs don't come through applications, they come through relationships, especially as you get to higher levels. Mm-hmm. People are always finding the opportunities based on the relationship you have with someone at that company.
That's right. People call it networking. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But, networks are only as good as the relationships you build. I mean, there's a great book by Harvey Mackay, and he talks about he wrote that book, How to Swim with Sharks, and he has a whole networking piece in there, and he says, dig your well before you need to drink from it. In other words, and build relationships with people, but you got to make deposits into those relationships. You can't network with somebody or create a relationship with somebody, get to know somebody for a minute or two, and then hit them up in 2 or 3 years, or whenever you feel like you want to reach out and take a withdrawal from that bank account. You got to make deposits. And that's what Harvey says. He says, it's like a bank account. You're making deposits into the account on a regular basis. And when it comes to networking, it doesn't mean to be every day or every week, but you need to circle with people periodically and send them a note or say hello or whatever. And you got to want to do it. I was on an airplane flying home yesterday, and I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and there was a whole article in there about the Waffle House. And it was an interesting article, and basically it said if you can manage a Waffle House, you can manage just about anything in the world. And it was a really interesting article. Most people probably would just bypass it or whatever. Well, I have an acquaintance who used to own a dozen or two Waffle Houses, and he's now a contractual CFO and is in consulting. I read the article. I tore it out of the paper because I didn't want to carry the whole thing with me all day long. So I tore it out. I have it in my notebook here with me today at the office, and I'm going to fold it up and write a little note to my friend Gary, and I'm going to pop in the mail to him, and he'll get a kick out of it, and it'll be fun, right? That's, because I want to. And I talked to him maybe 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to pop that in the mail, and he's going to get a kick out of it. And it's because I want to send it to him, but little stuff like that's making deposits into relationships that you have with people. So there's all kinds of things you can do. When I get to know people, it's hard to remember to do it, I like to ask, I want to get acquainted with what colleges they went to. Yeah, I just said that to you, 30 minutes ago? Oh, you went to Rutgers, Penn State, right? So, whether you follow them or not, I'm going to rib you when Penn State loses to so-and-so, or Rutgers beats somebody in football or makes the NCAAs or whatever. But you connect with that, right? It's a great way to have a little connectivity. So there are all kinds of things you can do to so-called continue to make deposits into those relationships. But just like anything else, it takes time, a little bit of energy. But if you do it, then you build nice relationships with people. And when you need to borrow something from that account, it's a lot easier to get when you have invested a little bit of time and energy into it.
And that's very true. I think what happens, a lot of people don't try to build a relationship until they need something. And at that point, it's too late. You really do have to do it well ahead of time so that when the time comes, you already have the relationships in place and the opportunities present themselves.
So that's absolutely right. I'm going to give a piece of banking advice, and I'll just insert by saying that there was a short 8-year period of time where my new bride decided that it would be in my best interest not to be a business owner and convinced me that I needed to have a corporate job. So I spent 8 years in banking. That's another episode. But I spent 8 years in business and commercial banking. And I used to tell my clients all the time, it's a whole lot easier to borrow money when you don't need it compared to when you do need it. So if you don't need an equity line and some banker says, hey, you have 50 grand or 100 grand worth of equity in your house, let's get you an equity line of, whatever. And you say, oh no, I don't need it, blah, blah, blah. I'll just get 10 grand. Get more, because you don't have to use it unless you need it. And when and if you ever need it, you won't be able to get it. It just doesn't work that way. So, I just used to tell people all the time, it's a lot easier to borrow money when you don't need it as opposed to when you do need it. And the same thing is in relationships. You got to invest in it so if and when you ever do need to ask, it's easier.
Absolutely. So you left banking and you got into the recruiting business. How did that happen?
I did. So I left banking. It's the first time I retired. I was in a very fortunate position. I worked my rear end off and did pretty much a 25-year career in banking in 8 years. I was in a position where I could retire. So I did. And that lasted about a year and a half. And I decided that it was time I was too young I didn't have enough money. And I was too young to do nothing for the next, or, whatever. I just had too much going on. I had too many things I wanted to do. So I received a phone call one day from a friend who just went to work for a boutique executive search firm. She insisted that I come down and talk to the CEO of the company, and I just said, no way. I was recruited as a banker by plenty of recruiters who wasn't impressed. They didn't have anything what we just discussed in terms of relationship building and skills and so forth, and I wasn't impressed. So I just didn't want to go there. And she insisted for about 3 months. And I finally said, I'll come down and meet with your CEO if you quit asking me. And so I went down and met the CEO of this company. I ended up meeting with this person for what I thought would be 20 minutes or 30, and I was there for a couple hours. Walk out with a really nice offer. I didn't accept. Spent about a week thinking about it. In fact, he finally called me and said, you in, you out. And I got a blessing from my wife to pursue it. The caveat when I went to work for this firm was I had to make a placement in 90 days. Now, what's interesting about that is that I was told I got to make a placement in 90 days. And if I don't make the placement in 90 days, then we'll shake hands. I knew this guy from church. We'll see you at church, and, nice knowing you, no harm, no foul. I said, okay. So I went to work, and I learned within just a day or two that to make a placement in 90 days means you have to market your services to hundreds of companies every week, thousands of companies every month. You got to get somebody to say, yes, I'm interested in your services. Then you got to get that person who says, yes, I'm interested in services, to agree to the terms of your contract. And at the time we were at 33 and a third retained search, which means you're getting married to this client and they're marrying you. And if there are consequences, if they do not, if they cancel or, whatever. So it's a very tricky sale. And then once you get all of that done, you have to go out and find executives that will leave their current organization to join the new one that you're proposing they join, and go through all the interview process and all of that and be offered the position, negotiate the offer. There's just so many moving parts to it, all of that in 90 days. So to make all that work, I didn't know otherwise. I literally worked 7 days a week. I worked Monday through Friday. On Saturday, I'd ride the office from my home was about 8 or 9 miles. And because I was working from 8 in the morning until 8 or 9 o'clock, Monday through Friday, I wasn't getting any exercise. So I rode my mountain bike to the office on Saturday and Sunday, and I worked all day on Saturday and Sunday and would then go home, totally waxed and exhausted. And I did that for 90 days. And at the end of 90 days, I had one placement and one hire and one just about ready to go. Now, you can do the math. I was working 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's a lot of hours, but that's what it took. And so that's what I did. And the funny thing is, so I made the placement in 90 days. My boss shook my hand, said, "Congratulations." This was by June or July of about July of 06. I made my placement. He shook my hand, said, "Congratulations, you're good to go. Just keep pressing like you're doing, and we'll carry it through the rest of the year." And that's what he said. So I go to the Christmas party. We're all having a good time. By then, I'd made 2 or 3 other placements, and somebody says, "Sudermann, I cannot believe you made a placement in 90 days." And I said, "What are you talking about? Didn't you make a placement in 90 days? "No, I didn't make it." He said, "I didn't make a placement in 90 days. He goes, "No one makes a placement in 90 days. I said, "What are you talking about?" That was a requirement. So it turns out me and one other person in the 18-year history of the organization ever made a placement in 90 days. It was a test. I didn't know any better. It was a test, But what I learned is, and very quickly, I was one of the highest producers in the organization. The search business, it takes that. I mean, in the first couple of years, you're building your reputation in the with executives around the country or whatever. And I don't work 7 days a week, 12 hours, 14-hour days anymore. But by golly, probably the first 2, 3, 4 years, I was working, all the time, and that's what it took to be successful. To carry it. But I remember having a conversation with somebody named Rich, who I've gotten to know well and have known now for 15 years. He was already at the firm. And I said, he was just getting phone calls. "Hey, Rich, can you do a search? Hey, Rich, can you do a search?" And I said, "How long did it take you to get to the point where people are just calling you?" And he said, "It took a long time, 8 or 10 years. So I'm finally at a point where I'm getting more phone calls than I'm making to get search work." But it was a hard task, but that's how I got into business, and I've been in it ever since. But I chuckle about that story because you can imagine my frustration when I heard no one ever made a placement in 90 days.
Hey, at least you passed the test, right? You proved them wrong.
I didn't know any better.
And sometimes I think that's one of the secrets of life is when you don't know any better and you go try something because you don't know any better, you actually succeed sometimes. And you can prove things wrong, and that's where success comes. So that's really cool.
Well, it's like being it's kind of, with kids. I mean, think about your kids when they learn to walk, right? They fall down, they just get back up, and they go again. As adults, we're so afraid of failure that we don't try stuff. We just get into kind of our normal routine of whatever we're doing, but we never push the envelope. And I heard I heard a quote a couple weeks ago that I think appropriate, and basically is the dark cave that you're afraid to walk into holds your treasure. So many people don't take a little bit of a risk or a risk at all because they're afraid of something or they're afraid of failure or whatever. I'm not saying you go out and you mortgage your house to the hilt and you invest in something, and if you lose it all, you're living under a bridge. I'm not suggesting that, but I am suggesting that occasionally you got to take a little bit of risk and try stuff. You'd be surprised what you can learn from doing some of those things.
Absolutely. We tell people to take appropriate risks. So leap with a parachute,
Exactly.
Talk the story about the cave. Well, find a flashlight,
Exactly.
Bring some light in there and
venture in, take a little bit of something. Yeah.
What would you do if your accountant called and had a 6-figure tax bill due? Would you be prepared or would you freak out? With Profit First, you'll be prepared for taxes and so much more. Life is going to throw us those curveballs, and implementing Profit First in your business ensures that you're ready to swing for the fences when you get those curveballs. You can learn more at ProfitComesFirst.com, where you can get the first 2 chapters of the book for free, schedule an intro call, or just email me a question. Check out ProfitComesFirst.com to get started on ensuring your business is always profitable and paying you first so you can build the life of your dreams. So you were with another firm and then you decided to kind of do your own thing. What happened?
Yeah. So let me explain that. So I was with that firm for 5.5 years and I learned a ton and it was a great education. But just like when I opened up this conversation with you, I told you I was raised by a father who taught me to build relationships. The firm I was working with was not centered on relationships. I'm a relationship guy. I want to be able to provide some assistance. I want to educate people. I believe that if I can help you be better at what you're doing and build that relationship with you at some point in time, perhaps you'll turn to me and ask for, maybe we can work together in some capacity, right? My boss was more interested in me making 100 phone calls a day, being on the phone 4 or 5 hours a day. It was all metrics, all sales, crazy sales. That's all it was. And we were butting heads. So at 5.5 years, I left and started my firm, Ascent Select, and didn't really, talk about risk. I was making good money. My family was happy. They were well fed. It was all good, but my soul wasn't being fed, and I was butting heads with my boss, and it was just time to leave. So I left in June of 2011, and I was working. Literally, I rented the corner of a friend's office space. I bought one of those corner desks at Office Depot for like $80 or $90, and it fit in a corner. I could put my laptop on it and a notebook and a cup of coffee, and I rented it for $90 a month. That was my office. It was probably 10 square feet. It was ridiculous. But I got on the phone and I called about 40 or 50 of these professionals I'd gotten to know over the years, and when I was working in the old firm, I'd say, like, Rock, you and I are talking. I'd say, Rocky, sorry you're not interested in that VP of finance job, whatever. But I'll tell you what, if you ever need to talk to me about anything, here's my cell number. Feel free to give me a call, and I'll be happy to see what I can do to assist. And every single phone call I ever made, I did that. So I started, every once in a while, these people would call me and we'd talk, and I just sort of built relationships. Well, when I got out on my own, I called 40 or 50 of those professionals that I'd known over the years, and I said, I'm doing my own thing. If you know anybody or know somebody who knows somebody that's looking for some search work, I'm available. I'm doing my own thing. And within two months, maybe 3 months, I got what I call some whiffs of JIF. I got some opportunities. I went and reached out to these individuals. And see, one of the things, Rocky, that I really did not get along well with in my old firm is we never would go see anybody. We never met anybody. We would all the deals are done over the phone, but we'd never travel and meet the clients. So when I started my own firm, my very first differentiator was that, and to this day, I will go see you. I will drive to Atlanta. I'll drive. If I can drive, I'll drive. If I have to fly, I'll fly. But I want to go see you. I want to shake your hand. I want to meet with you, and let's, talk about it. And so I instituted that right out of the gate. Within the first couple months, I'd made some connectivity, and ironically, there was a company that was moving the bulk of its workforce from New York City to Greensboro, North Carolina. The senior management team came to Greensboro for a site visit. They didn't offer. I just said, hey, you're going to be down here. Let me meet you for a cup of coffee. We'll talk about things. And I met them, shook hands. We talked for a while. And 2 weeks later, I've got a contract gig to do some placements for this company. And so what happened was the company needed 45, they needed to hire 45 finance people in the local area for their division they were moving to Greensboro. I talked to them in June. Well, I left in June. It was June, maybe July, early August of 2011. They needed 45 people to join their company by the end of the year, December 31st. That's 45 people in 4 months was a task, all right? But I was willing to do it. I gave them a fair price, and they agreed. And so I was good to go. Well, just because they signed the agreement and they're willing to have me come do this stuff doesn't mean it always goes that way. So they ran into some roadblocks, and they did not launch the search project until late September, maybe about September. So I had October and November, and about 2 weeks, I had about 8 or 9 weeks to do 45 positions for the company, because they had to be in the seat by, I think it was early December, not even December 31st, early December, but they weren't ready to start the search work until late September, early October. So basically I had like 8 or 9 weeks to do 45 positions. But I was successful in doing that, and you already know I got a work ethic, right? There were days where I didn't go to bed. I slept 24 hours. I had more than enough people set up for interviews and so forth, and we had 45 people done in about 8 weeks. And meanwhile, the company had hired these other recruiters to do operations and HR, and they had similar requirements that they did not meet. And so this company said, we want you to be the project manager of these other recruiters and take over all of this search. So I ended up, long story short, my firm ended up doing 160 positions in 2 years for this company. We were making a placement every 1.3 days for 2 years straight.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. It is. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's they were turned down by named firms out of New York City. I mean, we're talking named, publicly traded executive search firms that were turning them down, telling them that there's no way in God's green earth that we can fulfill these roles for you in that time period. So, it's kind of a leap of faith on my end. What's crazy is I ended up with a corner office on the second floor. I was contract executive recruiter for the firm, but HR was in a cubicle out in the main floor, and this guy, Mike Sudermann, contract recruiter, at a corner office. So, I kind of laugh about it, but it worked out. I made some really great relationships, and 8 years later, some of the senior management are good friends of mine, and we've built friendships and put a lot of people in. But it was all relationship based.
And so one of the ways that I've taught my kids to connect, and one of the best ways to build those relationships and connections, and I didn't realize how powerful it is LinkedIn.
Yes.
And I know you spend a lot of time teaching people about how to create their LinkedIn profiles and what are some good things you should do and what are some of the mistakes that people make. So would you mind sharing a little bit about the power of LinkedIn and what should people do?
Absolutely. Well, let me tell everyone that listens that they need to understand that the algorithm that LinkedIn uses is very similar to the algorithm of what Google uses. In other words, when you type something in for the search bar in LinkedIn, it's almost identical to Google and vice versa. So with all that said, keywords are critically important on your LinkedIn profile. And when I talk about keywords, I want you to be completely inconsistent on keywords. If you are a specialist in, engineering, maybe you're an industrial engineer, but you've also worked in various different industries, or maybe in chemical. Let's say you've been in chemical manufacturing as an industrial engineer. Whatever industries you're in, there are other keywords besides your primary occupation that you can use on your LinkedIn profile. And it's very important to be inconsistent. So let me give you another example. If you are let's say you're in finance and you're a VP of finance, just hypothetically, of course. If you just have VP of finance in 2 or 3 places on your LinkedIn profile, odds are you're not going to be found very well. You need to take everything you do in finance, financial planning and analysis, forecasting, month-end close, and everything that's associated with anything you've ever done in finance, and get those keywords into your LinkedIn profile. Very, very important. Another important factor on LinkedIn is the fact that in the world, there are over 575 million profiles. In the US, there's about 150 million profiles. But the bottom line is you're competing with everybody in the world. So you have to separate yourself or create ways you can be what we call be found on LinkedIn. And one of the best ways to be found on LinkedIn, and one of the easiest ways, is to include a picture. You are 14 times more likely to be found on LinkedIn with a picture. It conveys trust. And I will tell you, as an executive recruiter, having looked at probably hundreds of thousands of LinkedIn profiles over the years, for the people I come across that do not have a picture, I just move on. I don't care if you invented sliced bread. If your picture's not on there, I'm not interested. Because I think about, what are you trying to hide? Why isn't your picture on it? And I don't want a picture of you holding your surfboard or whatever professional capacity you're in. You need to convey that type. If you're holding a surfboard because you're a surf instructor, that makes sense. But if you're in finance and you're, at a football game with a beer in your hand, that's not going to work either. You have to convey whatever professional capacity you're looking for in your picture. It's just really important. Another great way to be found on LinkedIn is with what used to be called the summary, and it's now called the about section. You get I think it's 2,200 characters on your about section. So and the reason why I say about 2,200, LinkedIn changes it all the time. It's 2,000, it's 2,100, it's 2,000. I mean, they can change it, but you get at least 2,000 characters on LinkedIn. I mean, on your about section. It's your summary, if you will, of all your expertise. Now, just like anything, I tell people you need to have some bullets. You need to have a little explanation of what you do, and then break it up with some bullets. Because people are lazy and they're not going to read a whole bunch of paragraphs. But if you want them to read it, put some bulleted sections in there. But again, be very inconsistent with your keywords and just have them everywhere. Because when somebody is typing into Google, maybe you're a VP of finance and you specialize in, I don't know, let's say you specialize in, gosh, give me something, Rocky. You specialize in...
you mean a particular industry? Or
your functional is finance, but let's say your industry is pizza restaurants, okay? If you put that you're a VP of finance on your LinkedIn profile, and you're in the restaurant industry, that's okay. Some people may not even have the restaurant industry. They just put VP of finance. If you're in the restaurant industry and you specialize in pizzas or sandwiches, or maybe you're in the equipment side of the restaurant industry or whatever it is, you need to get all of that information in there on your LinkedIn profile so you can be found and separated from the other 4 million VP of finance people in there. So I'll give you a case study. Here's a case study. There is somebody, Rocky, you know this person. There is a person that's a friend of mine that has a military background and started a nonprofit. And so on his LinkedIn profile, he had his first name and under his title, let's talk about this real quick. Your title is also considered or called your headline. So Rocky's headline is Profit First Professional at Profit Comes First. All right. So that's his title or his headline. If you're a VP of finance and you just put VP finance in your headline, you are one of millions of other VP finance or finance professionals. But if you're a finance professional in the restaurant industry, specifically within the pizza restaurant industry, specifically your expertise is in, maybe you make the tomato sauce for the pizza industry, you need to include those pieces of information in your headline and your about section and sprinkled throughout the rest of your profile. Because if somebody is a recruiter or is in talent acquisition for an organization and they're looking for a senior VP of finance in the restaurant, food and beverage, pizza business with a specialty in tomato sauces, if you don't have tomato sauces or some of those other keywords in your LinkedIn profile, you will not be found. So there's a real trick to it. That my friend that was in the nonprofit piece, he had founder nonprofit on his headline. Now he works with first responders, military veterans, and some other types of people in like first responder capacities. When we searched other people in the nonprofit world, founder nonprofit organizations, there were several 100,000 on LinkedIn. We tightened up his title and made some adjustments, and he went from several 100,000 to one of 98 in the world with those specific characteristics that and areas of expertise he has. So now he will be found anytime somebody does a LinkedIn search or a Google search with nonprofit, military, veterans, service, first responders, and some of his other keywords. He will be on the first or second page of Google or LinkedIn, no matter what. So there are certain things you have to do on your LinkedIn profile to be able to be found. And I would just say right now that if you are listening to this podcast and you want some assistance or to talk about it, you can feel free to reach out to me. I think Rock is going to give you some ways to do that when we wrap this up. But the LinkedIn profile is absolutely huge nowadays.
And I've recently spent a lot of time fixing my LinkedIn profile and updating it and adding more information into it and just going back and cleaning it up. There was a lot missing, and I just didn't even bother. I didn't think about it because I wasn't looking for a job. So I just didn't care. But now I realize how important it is just for connections and the fact that people, when they go to do research on you, LinkedIn is one of the biggest places in the business world that people are searching you and looking at you. And so having a good, clean profile makes you look much more professional. Even companies are even looking at their own employees' LinkedIn profiles to get a better understanding.
That is absolutely right. And let me make this very clear. Absolutely do not put or regurgitate your resume on your LinkedIn profile. And I mean, here's the thing, folks. Your resume, I'm going to talk about this for a second. You mind, Rocky?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so your resume, one page for every 10 years of experience. If you have more than 30 years of experience, you still got to keep it at 3 pages. All right? 1 page for every 10 years. All right? Your LinkedIn profile, no one cares if it's 15 pages long. No one cares. But most people that are looking at most executive recruiters, most talent acquisition, most HR, most corporations that are looking at your LinkedIn profile, either already have your resume in hand and they're looking at your LinkedIn profile to see what else they can discover about you. And we could talk all day about LinkedIn, Rocky, but I'm telling you, they're going to look there. They could have your resume in hand and they're looking at your LinkedIn profile to see if it's worth their time and energy even to bring you on board. Bring you in for an interview. All right. Or they are looking at you on LinkedIn to determine whether or not they want to reach out to you in the first place. All right. So it is critically important that your LinkedIn conveys different information, not necessarily different, but additional information that you just have no need to put on your resume. You don't need to put your nonprofit affiliations. You don't need to put you don't need to put references on your resume anymore. No one does that. You don't need to include all the extra stuff on there. You need to save some of your quantifiable accomplishments for your LinkedIn profile that may not necessarily be on your resume, and vice versa. So those are just key pieces that you need to be careful about.
How important is it to create content on LinkedIn?
That is depending on what you're trying to do, it's very, very important. And there are tricks to that. But the easiest way to do it is go into your home page, which is a little house on the bar at the top of your LinkedIn profile. and you can start a post, and you get to, I think you get 140 characters. It used to be much longer, but LinkedIn's kind of followed some of the old Twitter concepts of a shorter post. The cool thing is you can include a picture, you can include a video, or you can just do a document. You can put links in there, that sort of thing. Video is not seen as much as, although people do a lot of videos, you get you'll get as much press on a Word document or a written post as you will a video. But here's an interesting statistic. If you write a post on LinkedIn, what the marketing specialists, the gurus on LinkedIn highly recommend you do is you let a dozen or two of your friends know you just wrote an article on LinkedIn, or not an article, but did a post, and ask them to review it and share it. Because within the first hour of making a post putting a post on LinkedIn, within the first 60 minutes, LinkedIn tracks all this. The more shares, the more reads, the more likes, and the more shares you get on that post, you get a higher ranking by LinkedIn, and they'll make it available to other people that you're not even connected with. And next time you make a post on LinkedIn, you'll be ranked higher, and you get more attention. I know it's all marketing, but it's really important. And you'll see it. You can go in and you can look at your posts on LinkedIn and see how many people have looked at it and how many times it's been shared and all that sort of thing. So if you can get some of your buddies or friends to, once you do it, just send them a text message and say, hey, I posted on LinkedIn. Just look at it, like it if you like it, share it if you like it. The more people that do that, the more street cred you get, if you will, with LinkedIn.
And it's important to understand what's going on and how to play the game, and also the fact that what used to work before doesn't always work today. The rules keep changing, and so you need to keep up with that, and you need to keep up with what's popular and what they're pushing at the moment. And so it takes work and effort.
It does, but it doesn't take that much. I mean, you can post anything. I mean, you want to become a thought leader. You want to become an expert. And Rocky, you mentioned that it's important, even if you're working in your existing organization and maybe you want to make a move into another role in your existing organization. Depending on the size of the company, there might be people that you might be working with a company that has a couple thousand employees, maybe tens of thousands of employees. Well, that upper management or whoever you're potentially talking to advance or transition into a different role in your organization, they don't know you, or they don't have your resume in his or her possession. So they're going to go to your LinkedIn profile and check you out. When we talk about career transition and stuff, you can transition in your current organization. I've got some great stories about that if you want to talk about it. But the point I'm making is that you need to constantly update your LinkedIn profile. We used to say in the old days you should update and you still should, you should update your resume every 6 to 12 months. But on your LinkedIn profile, the more fields, the more complete it is. And LinkedIn will tell you you're 50% complete, you're 70% complete. Add this to your profile or whatever. The more you have completed on your LinkedIn profile, the more likely you are to be found and so forth. Super important.
Well, thank you for sharing that. You're working on something new now. It's the Advantage Outplacement Career Transition Accelerator. Can you share a little bit about what that's about?
Sure. So this is a 45-day program that will help people transition into a new position in 45 days or less. And the goal is for people to not only be able to position themselves to receive multiple job offers. You want to be able to receive multiple job offers while at the same time finding a position that's purposeful and fulfilling A lot of people are making moves from current roles that just don't really fit with where they are anymore. Like when I made my move, I was button heads with my old CEO. I wasn't feeding my soul, so I didn't make a move. And I could have gone into, I looked at going into corporate talent acquisition, but at the time it wasn't what I wanted to do. But the point being is you have to be able to position yourself so you're receiving multiple opportunities to interview. The more interview opportunities you have, the more options you have for job, more often you're going to get job offers, and the greater position you'll be to find a position that's fulfilling, purposeful, and pays you accordingly to whatever compensation you feel like you need to be in. And those are really critical factors. And I'm not saying money is everything, because it's not. But there's, I got lots of stories. People have gone through our programs that are now working in positions that fit with where they want to be, what they want to do, and they're making, substantially better compensation. The key around our program is it's built. We teach you, it's video based e-learning with scripts and lots and lots of different templates for resume writing, LinkedIn optimization. We have a program called Bulletproof Interviewing Strategies. We teach social media above and beyond LinkedIn social media, but there's other things you can do on social media to make yourself more readily found. We teach job search strategies. We talk about networking, tactics of your job search, how you go about doing certain things. And then we also teach people how to close the deal and how to negotiate the offer. And I will say that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of professionals out there that have been very successfully interviewing over the years, and they've negotiated job offers just fine. But let's take a look at the pro golf circuit, for example. Tiger Woods has a coach. All the top 50, 100 players on the pro golf circuit all have coaches. They're all pro golfers. And they're all making good money, but they all have coaches. And it's because we can always fine tune. There are things we can do to improve certain skills. I'm not saying people I talk to don't know how to do what they're doing. We just come in and teach you how to fine tune it. We teach some resume building components that people just aren't doing that affect how many positions they land or how many interviews they land at certain points in time, which affect how many offers they get and so forth. So we've built this whole program that you can, it's 56 lessons. I mean, it's a ton of information, but at the end of the day, we want to help people transition into a new and better role that fits with where they want to go, and they can make more money. That's even better. So that's what we do.
And I think that's important. When your life and your work are in an alignment, your days are exciting. When you're out of alignment, your days are miserable. And so figuring that out and getting it right is important. And you put the effort into doing that, and the opportunities will come forth. But you've got to show up and do the work. It's kind of where it always starts. I know that you use profit first in your company, and I remember you telling me a great story about that. Would you share it with the audience?
Yeah, sure. Well, profit. I got to say, I was coaching an executive earlier today, and I told this guy that there were a couple books he needed to get, but one of them is, I said, you have to read Profit First. It's just a great book. And the concepts really make sense. And I don't care if you're self-employed or working in an organization. It's just really critical that and the whole concept of putting your money in buckets and so forth, if you want to call them buckets or whatever you want to call them, but is so important. So I read the book 2 or 3 years ago and implemented. I went to my banker and I said, I'm going to need 8 accounts. She looked at me like, that's crazy. I said, I said, hear me out. So I set up these accounts, and I have one for taxes. I have one for investments. I have one for personal. I have one for charitable contributions, and a slew of other accounts. And I proportion the revenue from my businesses, they go into these accounts. But so I had a particularly robust year, probably one of the best years I'd ever had in my career. And I was taking 40% of everything I made and I was putting it in a tax account. And I was ready for taxes. So every year, I'm in 3 companies, so it's tricky. I don't do my own accounting, or I don't do my own taxes. So my CPA is doing my taxes, and I get this call. It must have been easily late in the tax season, and I was surprised how late it was when I got the call from my CPA. And she says, "Mike, I have been stressing for 3 weeks to make this phone call to you." I said, "Diane, what's up? What are you stressing about?" And she said, "Well, you owe," she goes, "I'm just going to tell you. The reason I'm stressing is you owe more money to federal and state taxes than you've I think we've ever seen you have to owe." And I said, "What do I owe?" And she told me. She goes, I'm sorry. I said, "No problem." I said, "I'll have a check for you tomorrow. I'll come by and deliver it at the office." And she was dumbfounded. She's, "What do you mean?" Most people are crying on the phone. They're putting the phone down and walking outside to yell, screaming into the pillows, whatever. Just totally freaking out. And I just told her, I said, "I've implemented Profit First a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago at the time, and I'm ready. I'll just bring you a check." She's like, "Okay." So it was great, and my wife was kind of freaking out, and I told her we were all set and ready to go, and it was no big deal. And I've been very blessed and very fortunate to have to do that again this past year, and it's fantastic. But on the flip side, besides taxes, I have the contribution I need to make for my investments at the end of the year. My wife and I are able to make contributions to the charitable organizations we want to, we still have money available to run the business and our operations for the business, and it's all earmarked. Little here, little there, a little more over here, and I run the operations of the business off my OPX account, and what's in there is in there, and it just keeps everything straight. Helps me make more. Helps me make better decisions on operating the business, and it's easy to have it get away from you. I mean, so you have money in as a business owner, you have money in an account, and if you have it just in one account, you kind of look in there and go, "Oh man, I'm flush. Life's good. I'll go on vacation." And that reminds me of, and that's my story, but it reminds me of a friend of mine who decided to retire. He had all his money in one account. He's about 60. Said, "I'm going to retire." He was retired for 6 months. He had no concept of Profit First. He saw all this money in his savings account. He said, we're set. My wife works. I can retire. He took a cruise, went on vacation, had a couple more vacations the first of the year. And about 6 months into retirement, he got a rude awakening that he was running out of money. And now he's working again. He's probably going to work for 5 or 6 years longer than he should have because he spent all his money. It just wasn't well planned and it wasn't well managed. And if he was in Profit First, he would have had a much better handle on the whole situation. So again, I don't really think it's necessarily has to be purely business related. It can be business or personal. You can use all those concepts.
Absolutely. Pay yourself first works in everything.
It does. It does.
So based on our conversation today, what's one action step people can take to move forward this week?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're in some sort of career transition mode, or you're thinking about career transition, or you're not happy with your current role, or whatever your situation is, I would challenge you to go into your LinkedIn profile and adjust your headline with a more specific, targeted headline of whatever your expertise is. I mean, if you look up, I'm not going to tell you what it is. I would tell your audience to look Mike Sudermann up. It's with a D. It's like Superman, but with a D. If you go look Mike Sudermann up on LinkedIn, you're going to see my title. It doesn't say executive recruiter on there. So I would encourage you to adjust your title or your headline on your LinkedIn profile. Is a good plan of action for this week or the next week to adjust. And then if I was going to give you one more, I'd go in and I would say, maximize the opportunities with your about section. Get into a lot of detail. You can put hyperlinks and articles and videos and all kinds of stuff in there that people will be able to see and read. And that'd be a good start for you on your career transition, whatever it is.
And thank you for sharing that. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
That's a great question, Rocky. It just depends on what your definition of abundance is. Abundance for me is being happy, having great family around me, and being happy in where I spend 10 hours a day, which a lot of us are doing 8, 10, 12 hours a day working. So the secret to me would be to make sure wherever you're spending the bulk of your time during the day, that you're happy doing it. And again, it all doesn't have to resonate around money. Money does not mean you're happy. So just be careful with that.
And that's very true. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Rocky, you're killing me. These great questions. These are great questions. I would say that people need to focus on doing what makes them happy, and that will in turn generate your income or revenues from what makes you happy. Don't go into or do something that people tell you you should do because you could make a lot of money in it. Don't do that. Go, if you're in whatever career you're in, do what makes you happy, and the rest will come.
And I think that's a problem a lot of people have. They chased money, or they were told to do something and they never thought about, will this make me happy?
That's right. It reminds me of the zone of expertise versus the zone of genius. And there's two zones, and I fall into that personally occasionally, but your expertise is whatever you know you can do and you can generate money, but does it really make you happy? Your zone of genius is where you derive your energy and your happiness from. And if you can make money doing that at the same time, then it's real. Then you have, you're back to question one, and, how do you live an abundant life? So it's coming full circle.
And so our last question is, what one piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Everything I've just said. My advice would be to myself would be, again, don't worry about the money. Do what makes you happy.
And you did that.
I did that, but it took me 20 years. Probably 25 years to get to that point. Just think of where I'd be if I didn't spend 25 years trying to, climb the financial Mount Everest and just really focus on what I know, what my zone of genius is, which is teaching and coaching, and spent time in that as opposed to trying to pursue other things that I was good at. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't that I wasn't good at it, but it didn't really fulfill me. I wasn't really doing what fulfills me until I finally grabbed the flashlight, so to speak, and walked into the dark cave. Took a risk, a big risk.
Well, congratulations on doing that.
Thank you.
If people would like to learn more about you and your company and find you, what's the best way for them to connect?
The best and easiest way for people to reach out to me is Mike at theexecutiveleap.com. They can also Google The Executive Leap. My information is on Google. My book information's on there. But if they send me an email to Mike at theexecutiveleap.com, I'll get the email. In the subject line, they can put whatever they want to talk to me about. Even if they want to schedule a time to meet with me over the phone or a Zoom call, I'm happy to do that.
And we'll put all of those in the show notes to make it easy for people to find you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, appreciate it. It's been a fun time, and appreciate you having me as your guest. Thank you very much.
I still have one more part of my LinkedIn profile to fix, and that'll get done soon. If this seems overwhelming, then just pay someone to get it done. Companies are looking at your profile, including the one you work for. A small investment of time or money can help you increase your opportunities to earn lots more money. Our action step this week was to adjust your LinkedIn profile by creating a targeted headline and optimize the page to show your diverse skills and your accomplishments in detail. Don't forget to put time on your calendar to achieve this. Also, remember to build relationships before you need them. I have time slots and I make intentional efforts to meet people and to be of service. It could be guest lecturing in a college class or providing a lunch and learn, helping someone with their personal needs, learning to help others succeed without any expectations of returns allows me to lead an incredibly rewarding life. Don't forget to check out Mike's book and the podcast called The Executive Leap. If you're still listening, you must have liked the episode, so please share it with a few friends. It can start a great conversation, and I'd appreciate that. You can also connect with me on Facebook, on the Facebook page and the Facebook group for Richer Soul. What's preventing you from moving forward, and who are you putting on your team to help build the life you deserve? Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying something and failing. Can I help you achieve your goals through coaching and accountability? Just email me. We can start with a short chat to see if we're a good fit. For many people, one session allows them to take a giant leap forward towards their dreams. You can always get me at rocky@richersoul.com. I'd love to hear how you're doing and how the information I've shared has helped. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week and an amazing year.